Dear colleagues of around the world, I'm very happy to be here to speak about another topic very important. I think that the most important now in the world of sport, that is investigative journalism. Investigative journalism is something that can also help our profession to come back to a certain level, because we have forgotten what it means, what are the meaning of the true information, because now with the fake news, they are trying to destroy also our credibility. And I think that only the investigative journalism, that it can be only one only profession, but everybody can make his small investigation around. It's not a problem. The problem is that we have to understand how to deal with the investigation. Here with us, we have three top journalists, one from Germany, another from Kenya, another from Switzerland, that they have different experience, but very important experience. And I hope that they can share with us their experience, because so you can open your mind when you have to try to investigate on some facts. Because you must enter with the mind in a special mood and also in a special will, because sometimes investigations are not so easy. It's not as in the movie. You have to work very hard. Sometimes to make only a documentary, you can ask to Hajo, for example, or to Patrick, it will take months. And sometimes in the middle of the work, you can understand that maybe that you made some mistake and you have forgot something and you have to go back and to begin again. I think that, Hajo, how much it took for you to make the documentary that has changed the world of doping? How much for how many months you have worked?
This took me almost a year. It started December 2013, when I considered to do a story or documentary about Russia. At that time, I just thought about a small documentary. And I remembered that a couple of years ago, a scientist from Russia approached me and told me that, from Austria, approached me and told me that a scientist from Russia was offering at that time a so-called wonder drug, wonder doping substance, which can be used to make you much stronger without getting detected. This was in 2010. And in 2013, because like always in our profession, you have to do so many things at the same time. So I didn't follow up on that at that point. But in 2013, I remembered that. So I contacted this guy in Moscow with another identity, because I was sure that to work as a journalist here in Russia is maybe not very useful. So at the very end, he offered me, because I pretended to be a German manager, sports agent, and preparing German athletes for the Sochi Olympics. So I pretended to be a manager, and he offered me for 100,000 euros to get that wonder drug in Moscow. It was like in a crime story. At a Belarus station in winter in January, so it was really, as I said, like in a movie. And this was the initial starting point that people approached me, and it was in January 2014. If I'm interested in other whistleblowers from Russia who might help to release the evidence about state-run doping. So this was the initial starting point when I met first time Vitaly and Yulia Stepanov, the very famous whistleblowers from Russia who are now living at a secret place in the United States. And then I started my investigation, and it took me, as I said, almost a year, because I had to consider many things at the same time. How can I do the story? How can I prove it? How can I protect the whistleblowers? How can I make sure that nobody harms them in Russia when the story gets released? There was a precondition from the two guys They told me if we come forward with information, if we deliver you and provide evidence in terms of hidden camera footage and hidden audio footage, we have to be sure that we have left the country at that point. This all in all took me a year, but at the very end, you know that the story could be broadcast in German television and later around the world.
But there was a moment in which you thought that you arrived at that point. You were afraid that all the work would not to get to the end, because every time in our work there is always a moment in which there is a fear, no? That you have a lot of evidence, but you need still one more, no? For all the.
To be honest, this was a little different because the Stepanovs are very clever people. At the very beginning, they told me it doesn't make any sense to tell you something without providing evidence, because if you don't provide the evidence, we are totally lost. Nobody would believe us. So they started at the very beginning to tell me that they have already recorded footage, which is very, very strong proof for at least widespread doping in Russian athletics. And they can provide even more, and they can produce even more evidence. So to be honest, this was a fantastic situation for a journalist, because I didn't have to look for evidence. I didn't have to work for this evidence, this specific evidence, because they told me they will provide it anyway. So this was really, really good for me. But the other side of the medal is that there was not only the story with the Stepanovs, there was also much more. If you remember the whole case with Lamin Diak. Lamin Diak is a whole corruption, the blackmailing athletes in order to get money by helping them to cover up doping tests, for example, in Russia. This was a much bigger thing at the same time. It was not on the focus at that point because the Stepanov story was so unbelievably impressive. But the other thing was linked to the highest parts of the International Athletics Federation. That means the president himself and his son. And to prove that was much more challenging, because I needed real evidence. I needed emails, I needed documents, I needed bank account confirmations of any money transfers. We had to go to Singapore in order to find people who have been obviously involved in the whole black business from the son of Diak. So this was really tough, and that was not true at all if he can finally bring the story. But at the very end, we had the evidence we needed, and we could tell two different stories: the Stepanov story on the one side and the IAAF story on the other side. And the interesting thing is that some people forget that in the current situation, that the Stepanov story brought into light the whole Russian doping scandal. The other part of the story brought into light the whole corruption within the IAAF up to the top. And all what has happened afterwards, that means all the investigation by police and state prosecutors in different countries in the world. If you talk about France, if you talk about Brazil, for example, if you talk about Carlos Nussmann or all these guys, all of this was based on the Diak story in 2014. So at the very end, nobody could expect that. And I was never expecting such an unbelievable impact of one documentary. But at the very end, it was like this. And you are right. In a way, I would say it was like an earthquake in international sports, because for the first time, we could provide on a very, very intensive and extensive scale how the structures in at least some parts of international sports are already working. And if you see that from 2014 and if you compare it with the 2020 documentary about international weightlifting, it's in a way it's linked, because it shows what can happen if sports officials are not controlled by independent authorities, that they do what they want, because it's a kind of bubble where they live in. And this is not only focused on athletics. You can see that in some parts of the IOC. You can see that in, as I said, weightlifting. You see that in FINA, for example, in swimming, and also in international volleyball, for example. There are always at least similar structures which allow people to do their own business, black business, covered up business, because there is no real control. And that's what I learned from all over the years, that, as you said, we need a kind of control mechanism from the outside. That doesn't mean necessarily that it has to be a journalist. It can be also police, it can be other authorities, but at the very end, you have always to make sure that these people who are working on that field are really independent. And then it comes to the question, for example, in Russia, are state-run media in Russia really independent? Or are police and courts and judges in Russia are really independent? I have my doubts, because I made my own experiences when they chased me as a journalist in Russia, which was really weird. And on the other side, you have always to take into consideration that even sports journalists, to some degree, if you talk about TV rights, TV contracts, are closely linked to federations, are closely linked to sports officials to some degree, which means that sometimes networks, publishers are not so really interested in do investigative journalism, because they want to sell a product. They want to sell. They want to get high ratings. They want to get good money by sponsors, for example, because they can sell their advertisements better to higher prices. This TV commercials, for example, this is also a kind of dependence. So, to be honest, we need everywhere independent structures, and it's not that easy to build them up, because particularly in TV journalism, there's too much connection between the people we have to look to and the system of sports, and to a certain degree, even ARD. I'm working for ARD as a state-run, as a public television in Germany. We have our business contracts with the IOC, for example, with EBU, and then IOC, and that makes it a little complicated to some degree to be always strictly independent. I try my best, and to be honest, we have really made huge progress in Germany. I can really work freely. I have nobody who is interfering, but 10 years ago, it was much different.
Well, no, for sure, but this is a kind of evolution in the sport, because even sport now, they need to come back to the normal life, because if not, will be destroyed. No, in some way, they need, because the situation at the top level is changing also, because now there is more attention, even to the life of the organization, not only on the track or in the field, but also outside. So it's up to us now. When I say that a good journalism can help also sport to save their rules, is true. Because if everybody of us will follow the normal dignity rules, I think that we can do a lot to avoid that the sport become a business only for a few people, but can be a good activity for the young generation. Now, can I wait a moment that I will go with to our panelists. I will leave the Idah. You are there. You have a different experience. You are compared to Hajo. Hajo is on the investigative journalism since many years. No, you are a young reporter, and when you have begun, and how it happened that you began to study a kind of investigation on the football match fixing in Kenya.
Right. So this was actually also a lot of time in the making. And exactly as we're talking about, and especially in our line of work, there's so much that we're doing simultaneously, So for example, when this idea of match fixing came, it actually came in the year that I did the Young Reporters program with AIPS. So I work for Nation Media Group based here in East Africa, and there had been a lot of cases of match fixing, even for the last, honestly, even going back to the last 50, 40 years. But I think the difference with the African perspective is that match fixing back in the day, at least, was on very tribal lines here within Kenya. So it was basically about a team that belonged to a certain tribe trying to outdo this one and getting help from a separate tribe. But as the years went by, it became more commercialized, it became more economical. And in late 2018, there was word that there was a huge ruling that was going to come from FIFA in regards to certain match fixing cases dating back to 10 years before that here in Kenya. So that naturally sparked my interest. So in one setting, in and around that time, I remember we were just talking about it casually, and someone approached me, and they told me, someone within the football circles here in Kenya, and they told me, actually, if you're thinking of developing this story as you're talking about, talk to me. We can see how we're going to go about it. But of course, just as we're saying, I didn't really pay too much attention to that. 2019 was going to be a really packed year. There was the Nations Cup, which is a super huge deal here in Africa. There was going to be the All Africa Games or the African Games. There was going to be a lot, the marathons. It was a normal sporting year. So when the ruling came, and it was that a few Kenyan players, led by one major one called George Owino, had actually been found guilty by FIFA, it really sparked my interest. And I'd been doing small features, mini documentaries for a while. And I started thinking, how about I actually get into this and try and develop and, just execute this story properly. But once again, it was such a busy year. So interestingly enough, for this documentary, and I'm really happy that I got good guidance from my editor at the time, I did 3 scripts for this particular documentary. And once again, goes back to my editor. I'd write a script in the middle of covering this and this and this. So this is also something, and especially from a young reporter's perspective, that needs a lot of dedication, and especially because if you're not at that level of your career yet, where you can be able to solely focus on one thing, this is you coming into work to cover basketball, and at night you go home to write or develop your script to do with your match fixing documentary. Also needs a lot of research. So initially I'd do a script, my editor tells me, no, this is too academic. Stop telling me things I already know. Go do it again, come back. And it happened 3 times. And by the 3rd time we developed it, and it was quite a good script, but it had taken a year and a half to do that because of everything else. And this is something we were talking about earlier, just before the class started. Print investigations and broadcast TV investigations are very different, because with print investigations, there are a lot of people who are willing to talk to you even on the record, but it's because they're not going to be seen. But come therein, you talking to that person to try convince them and try telling them, look, we'll disguise you, we'll silhouette you, we'll blur you, and they totally freeze and everything changes. So getting that material for TV proved to be very, very difficult. So naturally, for us, we didn't have per se any, how do I put it, any undercover footage, but we went with documents that we got. And of course, this was a print TV partnership. So print had already developed the story somewhat. And then from where they left off, we were able to take it a bit further with some of the documents we got attesting to referees within tribunals here in Kenya, admitting to getting about the equivalent of $100 to fix a game, So when you look at it, it sounds like very small money, of course, for the referees here who are accepting the bribes, but it's really big money because this is a very intricate web that goes to the very, very top, some of the most crucial figures in match fixing. We're talking the likes of Wilson Perumal, had been traveling to Kenya, had been traveling to Nigeria in and out. He's been, on record, especially previously on CNN, admitting to the fact that he helped Nigeria get into the 2010 World Cup. How true that is, there has been documentation to show that. So we were able to develop the story, but it's also something that was very important for us. And of course, it's just a natural part of journalism to get as many sides as possible. We were also very lucky that the whistleblower was able to talk to us, one, and talk to us on camera, two. So it was very taxing. It was very challenging, a lot of dead ends, but eventually it worked out. But it's a very intricate system and it's still going on today.
Yeah, but for example, for human in Africa, it's more difficult to get to investigate, because I think that, you know, in our association, in our award, we have had Anas from Ghana that was compelled to go with the mask, and 2 days before our ceremony, his right hand was killed. No, and how was for you? Was dangerous?
I would say it would be more dangerous now, and especially because people now got to know me a bit more, recognized my face a bit more. But at the time, this is maybe what, 2 years ago, I was in a part of my career that was pretty unassuming at the time. I can say when it started getting a bit threatening was, you know, when word slowly started getting out that between print and TV, that we were delving into the situation of match fixing. And unfortunately, he's not present today, but he had given me permission to represent him. My colleague, Jeff Kenyanjui, for example, was receiving, you know, horrible emails, you know, threats on email. For me, I was getting very weird calls, and especially towards the end, just before it aired, the week before it aired, you're getting calls, you pick up, no one is talking, you're just hearing someone breathing. You try call back, the line is off. There's no way you can actually be able to trace who that was. So it gets pretty dangerous, but I would say it would be more dangerous now because I'm more recognizable as opposed to maybe 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, I remember, because, you know, once I met also Ayo. I went with Ayo in Rio to make we went first, I think, to an hotel, and Ayo was there with the bodyguard because he was in danger. So I think that
Wow.
is also dangerous work for investigation sometimes. Now I leave only one moment. You know that we go to the third panelist, Patrick Oberli, that he made a special documentary that is very interesting and also with a lot of irony, but he has convinced the top guy of match fixing to appear and to speak, because he has met him in Budapest. He's from Singapore, because, you know, Singapore is a kind of crossway where everybody meets for the match fixing. And the most interesting thing is that in Bahrain was organized a match completely fake, but was perfect for the betting, no? But how can be national team fake? Patrick, to you.
Ok. D'abord, vous m'excusez, je vais parler en français. C'est plus facile pour moi de m'exprimer précisément. Et puis, juste avant que je te réponde, Gianni, je voulais juste remercier Hajo, qui se souvient probablement pas de moi. Mais il y a quelques années à Monaco, je venais d'entrer dans le monde du journalisme sportif. Il avait sorti une grosse histoire et j'avais essayé de l'interviewer. Il m'avait accordé quelques minutes et je pense que dans les rencontres professionnelles, ce moment-là, dont il ne se souvient plus, est resté pour moi très important. Je voulais le dire comme ça, juste en passant, parce que là, je suis un peu toujours impressionné. Voilà. Pour en revenir à ce match, hein, Bahreïn-Togo, qui s'est passé au mois de septembre 2010. En fait, ce match était une légende, est devenu une légende dans le monde du match fixing. Cela faisait 6 ou 7 ans que chaque fois, toutes les 2-3 ans, j'en entendais parler. Il y avait d'abord eu l'histoire d'une fausse équipe du Togo qui venait de nulle part avec des faux joueurs qui avaient joué au Bahreïn. Ça avait fait un buzz autour du monde. En 2015, quand il y a eu l'élection pour la présidence de la FIFA, Gianni Infantino était opposé à Sheikh Salman. Et dans cette période où toutes les news sortent, l'organisation de ce match par le Bahreïn, dont Sheikh Salman avait été le président, est revenue sur le tapis. Et on disait comment est-ce que quelqu'un qui a pu avoir des matchs truqués dans sa fédération pouvait devenir président de la FIFA. Et puis, 2 ans plus tard, j'ai appris qu'Interpol utilisait l'exemple de ce match pour la prévention dans le match fixing partout dans ses séminaires autour du monde. Et quand je me suis renseigné, j'ai remarqué que tout le monde parlait de ce match, mais personne n'avait enquêté, n'avait cherché à savoir qui était là. Donc, notre démarche a été de chercher qui étaient les faux joueurs et le faux coach du Togo. Est-ce que c'était vraiment des faux? Qui était le coach du Bahreïn? Qui est-ce qui, à la FIFA, était l'enquêteur qui aurait dû enquêter sur ce match et qui ne l'a pas fait? Pourquoi Interpol n'est pas allé interroger des personnages comme qui étaient sur le terrain ou comme Wilson Raj Perumal pour ces enquêtes avant de présenter le match? Et c'est le début de notre démarche. C'est un match qui fait rigoler. Au départ, on pense que c'est une farce. Et le titre du documentaire est Football Comedy. Mais petit à petit, au fur et à mesure de nos recherches, ce qu'on a remarqué, c'est que c'était une tragédie plus qu'une comédie. Parce que même si ça peut faire sourire, même si les joueurs du Togo n'étaient pas des joueurs en forme, des vrais joueurs, les joueurs de l'équipe A, c'était des humains qui ont été quelque part instrumentalisés pour aller jouer un match qu'ils n'avaient aucune chance de gagner pour le compte de Wilson Raj Perumal, qui était l'organisateur du match et qui avait un contrat avec la Fédération du Togo et avec la Fédération du Bahreïn. Et le fait de remonter, de retrouver tous les personnages nous a permis de voir que dans le match fixing, il y a bien sûr les joueurs, et c'est souvent les joueurs qui sont sanctionnés à la fin, mais ça nous a aussi et surtout permis de voir que souvent, je dirais souvent, pas toujours, mais souvent, les joueurs sont des victimes de par leur vie, de par leurs conditions de vie, de par le non-paiement de leur salaire, et que derrière, il y a des dirigeants qui participent au match fixing, des dirigeants qui le favorisent, et surtout des organisations comme celle de Wilson Raj Perumal, ou alors il y en a eu d'autres, notamment en Europe, toute l'organisation de Bochum en 2007, quand il y avait eu le scandale, qui vivent et qui favorisent, qui truquent des matchs sans jamais ou presque être inquiétés, parce qu'ils ne sont pas dans le giron du football. Et aussi parce que le football n'a pas les moyens d'enquêter sur le match fixing. Donc, au départ, c'était une plaisanterie. À la fin, c'est devenu une comédie, c'est devenu une tragédie, et ça reste une tragédie. Parce qu'il y a des gens qui sont allés en prison, les joueurs ont toujours peur pour leur vie. 10 ans après, c'est quand même impressionnant. Et il y a des gens qui ont été sanctionnés sans possibilité de se défendre. Et par contre, ceux qui ont gagné de l'argent, ils n'ont toujours aucun problème ou presque.
Yeah. Yes. I must only to tell you, because I listened to the translation and something was missing in the translation, okay. That I was once in Bahrain, and I met also the president of the Federation of Bahrain, asking him how is possible that this team came here, because they said that, but it was a young guy with not so much experience. But so, yes, the letter was the official letter of the federation. They received this. because the organizer of the match was not the Bahraini, but in this case, the translation is that if the organizer was this Pernal from Singapore, that he was going around and he was also presented to all the people as a very good organizer that was helping to gain money to the athlete and to the team and also to other people. So the incredible situation was this organizer from Singapore that around the world he was only organizing friendly match, no? Because he tell himself that he's a friendly match organizer. So friendly match is very special, no?
Yes, je continue. Winston Ranch Perumal, il avait un contrat avec la Fédération du Bahreïn et la Fédération du Togo. Donc, les deux fédérations lui demandaient d'organiser des matchs. Et ce qu'il nous a dit à Budapest, c'est qu'il cherchait des équipes qui allaient perdre contre le Bahreïn parce que le Bahreïn voulait toujours gagner les matchs amicaux. Donc, pour lui, c'était intéressant. Il trouvait des équipes qui allaient perdre. Le Bahreïn lui payait cher pour l'organisation des matchs. L'équipe qui perdait le payait pour l'organisation du match et lui pouvait parier directement ou avec ses amis à Singapour, notamment avec un homme qui s'appelle Dantan à Singapour, qui maintenant a été arrêté après de nombreuses années de trucage.
Oh, good. Yes, it was a situation in which he was especially working in some area in the world where he knew that even the federation was not expert enough or not organized enough to understand what is going on, no? Because one of his friends was in Finland where he bought a team also. There was somebody that has bought also teams. What is incredible, now we are discovering a situation that was unbelievable before, no? Completely unbelievable. And in some way, your documentary can be only the beginning of many other stories. I think that every day arrives to you some information regarding some match fixing and some fake match also. Because the problem that sometimes are really fake matches and people believe in it. This is the most crazy thing. But I think that now it's time to go to the question of the people, no? Because, and first of all, I want to introduce to you our mentors. So our mentors are Kay Rednach, Riccardo Romani, Jean-Paul Savard, and Martin Mazur. So guys, now the floor is yours for the first question to our guest.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you particularly to our guests for fascinating and depressing tales they've told us about their work. Fascinating because it says so much about their own courage and their own credibility in following through these the initial leads, and depressing because of what it says about the organization and some of the structural weaknesses of international and national sport. The one question I'm interested in particularly, this is for Hajo, because it's something that you did mention. How do you, in the first place, persuade your employers, broadcasters, whoever, that this is worth pursuing? Because you yourself initially didn't know the great length that the story and the strings would go to. And also, as you say, there is you know, a commercial interest coming back the other way, maybe a little bit of commercial resistance. So I'm very interested in your persuasive powers.
It is a long way, a very, very long way. And it didn't start in 2014 with the Russian story. It started much, much earlier. I'm a journalist, I'm a sports journalist since 1985. Now I'm in the business for 36 years. And I was at the beginning, I was always interested in background stories, but since I was a very young reporter, I was focused on becoming a radio and TV commentator. This was what everybody wanted at this point, and I said to be successful in this domain, I need to become more or less the same, or in a similar position. And I started in 1992 with covering the Olympics in Barcelona as a swimming commentator, and that I did it for 14 years. So I traveled around the world for swimming, but I have to admit that as time went by, and more, it was boring for me, because I did always the same. I was covering events. I was talking about athletes' performances. I was talking about how fast is somebody, or is he weak, or is he not weak? Is he good? Whatever. At the very end, it was only the surface of sports, but it was never telling the story, what is happening behind the curtains. And when I started to ask those kinds of questions, I realized very soon that this was obviously not in the interest of the majority of sports journalists. And I had really huge resistance at that point in my own network, I have to admit that. And there have been people who were more or less interested in promoting sports, particularly cycling. At the early 2000 years, when Jan Ullrich, the very famous German cyclist at that point, was in the public focus, and everybody was interested in the Tour de France and watched the Tour de France. And critical questions haven't been very popular at that point. So, for example, ARD at that point was a kind of sponsor of the team Telecom, of the T-Mobile team. Our brand, our logo was a one, the figure one, and it was presented on all shirts and TV commercials, but all over the place. And we made huge contracts with protagonists of cycling, for example, with Ullrich, just to have him exclusively in interviews. But to be honest, the substance of these interviews was really very, very, let's say, superficial. There was nothing really concrete. And by the way, we know now exactly that what he told us was, at least when it came to the question why he was so strong, why he had such success, it was a lie. It was a simple lie, what he told us. And when I did that, I asked these questions. My people didn't want to ask me that questions. And so I had a really hard time to some degree in 2006, because they kicked me out as a swimming commentator. One reason for that, an email from myself became public, which criticized harshly the way ARD was doing sports coverage at that point. But sometimes the history has really weird and strange developments, because it's the same point when they kicked me out, the whole Fuentes case became public, and they told me at that time, you should focus only on doping, because that is obviously your biggest interest. And they thought that this story that the whole doping story is not that big. But then Jan Ullrich came and Fuentes, so they had to find somebody who's doing those kind of stories. And because I did that all from time to time already beforehand, for example, about doping in East Germany in the 90s, it was the question came on the table if I should do the whole Fuentes coverage. I did that in 2006, and then a big discussion in Germany started about how sports journalism should be. Only entertaining, only covering events, only celebrating the heroes, or also showing, looking behind the curtains, behind, let's say, in the backyard of sports. And so at the very end, in 2007, ARD established the so-called ARD doping editorial team in Cologne. And this was a kind of answer to the whole public discussion. And they asked me to join that team, and I did it. I became more or less the leading reporter in that unit. And the good thing is, and this is until nowadays, exactly the same, maybe with different structures, I will tell you later. But ARD was the first and is still the only one in the whole world who is really spending money on a regular basis for doping and corruption investigation in sports. This is, from my opinion, more or less unique, because you have in many countries people who are working in television, but they have always to ask for money for separate projects. They have always to bid in a way. If a documentary will be financed, yes or no. And we have a structure. We have different people working only on doping and corruption stories in sports. And in 2017, it became so huge after the Russian doping scandal that they asked me if I would be able to join a production company team, or if I build up my own company, because it's much better structure-wise and economically to do that in a, let's say, from a position outsourced position. So now I have an exclusive contract with ARD. I have, let's say, 10 to 12 people who are fixed members of my staff. I have some freelancers, and we are working exclusively on doping and corruption stories. That means it's not because we are very talented journalists. No, the background is very easy, because if you spend money, if you invest money in doping investigation or in corruption investigation in sports, then you will have success. It's very easy. You need to spend time, you need to have the resources, you need to be allowed to go to different places in the world, you need to talk to people, you have to build up a kind of network with informants, with whistleblowers, and with other people who are close to you, or who are at least sympathetic in a way about what you are doing. And that's exactly what happened since 2007. And that explains, from my point of view, the impact we had. And very easy, if ARD wouldn't have invested the money in 2007 for this ARD doping editorial team, the whole Russian doping scandal wouldn't be released in the way it has happened. That's a very easy answer.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Hajo.
Thank you. Let's go to Ricardo. You.
I want to thank everybody that is here today. I would like to make a little bit of introduction, because I think we are speaking to an audience that is willing to put themselves, the guys are willing to put themselves into investigative journalism, and they're right, because if you look at the last 10 years figures in the world of journalism around the world, those who pursue investigative journalism, they were able to make a profit as well. And it's a growing business, besides being a very necessary act of journalism. But what I feel, and most of you guys are looking at the elephant in the room. There is an elephant in the room. If you come from a small town or even a big town in a country in which the concept of investigative journalism is not really developed, or even it's in a way is finding a hostile environment, it's not easy. And the elephant in the room is, how can I fund, how can I have the money to support myself in order to pursue that career? The three guests, they all have either or experience, contacts. Idah, who I was very happy to see on the process to do this movie. She was working for a TV station. She's covered in a way. But those that are freelance, for example, are not in that kind of a safe environment. And I'm saying safe, but I know it's not that safe anymore. But anyway, they don't have that backup that allow them to put time, energy into something that can or cannot produce a result. It's a risky business in a way. So having made this introduction, I'm asking the three journalists, how do you really solve that problem, which is the most important problem? You need a story, of course, you need a lead, I understand. But after you have a lead, you need to build trust with people that gives you money to pursue that lead. If not, you need money in the bank to spend, sometimes, you don't know, maybe 1 year, 2 years. So can we try to give our guys really how to do first step into the world of investigative journalists, given the fact they don't have a structure behind them? I'm leaving to Patrick, Hajo, and Idah.
Si vous êtes d'accord, j'aimerais juste parler de cela parce que je ne suis pas un journaliste de télévision, je suis un journaliste de presse écrite. Pour mon employeur, je ne travaille pas à plein temps. Et depuis 10 ans maintenant, ce que je fais, c'est que je prends l'équivalent de 8 à 10 semaines de vacances qui sont les miennes pour mener des projets indépendants. Alors, ça a donné le dernier football fixed football comedy pour lequel j'ai travaillé en parallèle, en fait, de mon emploi de journaliste de presse écrite dans le sport. Alors, plusieurs fois, ça me permet de lier, en fait, des histoires pour la presse écrite et des histoires et des choses pour le documentaire. Il y avait, par exemple, le congrès de la FIFA à Manama, au Bahreïn, où je suis allé pour mon journal, mais où j'en ai profité pour travailler 4-5 jours pour le documentaire à essayer de rechercher des gens. Le problème des moyens, c'est quelque chose qui est fort. Alors, Hajo a toute cette structure dont il est à l'origine, mais même en Suisse, par exemple, c'est très compliqué, notamment en Suisse française, c'est très compliqué d'avoir et les moyens, et le temps, et le soutien juridique pour mener des enquêtes ou faire son travail. Donc, il s'agit de prendre sur soi, de prendre le temps, de ne pas avoir quelqu'un qui met la pression pour essayer d'arriver au bout de projet. Voilà, je voulais juste partager ceci.
Merci, Patrick. So basically, you can use your vacation. It's also it is what it is. It makes sense to explain how difficult it is. Mm-hmm. But for example, and then it goes to Hajo. Is there a moment in which people must invest in you? They must believe you. They must say, okay, I know this guy is for real. He has a reputation. And they say, okay, I give you 6 months. And in this 6 months, you need to produce some result. Is that how it works sometimes?
Can I answer the question?
Yes, yes. Just
okay.
I'm trying to bring up for our students a very practical way to deal with this. You have a lead, you find out something, and then you need to have people of trust. First of all, to protect your story, and second, to be able to finance your time following that lead. So a little bit of
to be honest, it's working in both ways. Because we have the money, we can find the leaks. It's not first we have the leaks and then we get the money. The good thing is that ARD is supporting us in a very, very, let's say, historical, unprecedented way in sports journalism. This, from my point of view, as far as I know it from all the experience I made with colleagues from Germany and from abroad, I never heard that this system is somewhere in place additionally to us. That's what I heard. And again, it's not because we are so good. It is only because people gave us the possibility to do it. That makes a difference. Yeah, there are so many talented journalists, and we are here in a bubble. Many interested journalists who would like to do that. That's at least what I assume, because they're interested in background and investigative journalists. But if they don't get the money, that's very easy. They can't do that because they have to afford everything which is necessary to survive. And particularly investigative journalists in some countries are the poorest ones in our profession. And to be honest, this is exactly the reason for I criticize not journalists primarily who are not interested in doing that. What I really criticize is that publishers, networks, that big people, big money, people who would be able to do that, they could spend 1%, let's say 0.5% of the whole budget they invest in TV sports rights only in this, and it would help a lot. That means I would like to encourage Gianni, for example, maybe in future to invite for a conference not only us as investigative journalists, but the people who are responsible for the budgets, who are responsible, and they have to declare why they obviously think that real journalism and what we are doing is in a way the real substantial journalism. And it's not only investigative, it can be also background stories, it can be stories which explain structures, for example. It doesn't need to be necessarily always uncover scandals, whatever. It is also good to understand how sport works. But for this, TV networks, they always have commercial interests, which means not all of them, I don't want to generalize it, but many of them. They want to have high ratings. Online websites want to have a high number of clicks. They want to be popular. They want to be seen. That's always the same. And it's 95, that's my feeling. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I at least have seen in the last couple of years, and not only in the last couple of years, even longer, that the main way sports journalism is presenting itself in the general public is about covering events or reporting about events, which is, I don't say we don't need that. I don't say we shouldn't do that, because sport is a cultural value, which we have to also in a way to publish, to present. But this is only one portion of the story. And to encourage people which have the money, have still the money. And honestly, I know that newspapers have a hard time, harder and harder, that they have to reduce their budgets because of big competition with online, whatever. I know that. But even then, if you would just use 2% of your budget in sports, you would invest a little money and much impact. And of course, if you would work for 2 years without any success, without any impact, without any story you can read, which can happen at some point, then you might have to ask the question. Thank you. Why you didn't reach anything? I know it would be the same for me, but the precondition in order to find at least a possibility to get the results is you have to give people a kind of, let's say, credit beforehand. Otherwise, you will never get success.
Thank you. A very, very interesting point. Before going to Jean-Paul, I want to end up with Idah, because and then Jean-Paul, that is definitely, because we say most of the time that the breaking news culture is dead, and reporting a football game on paper it has become a very lame activity because we know everything. The speed of the cycle of the news is so fast that when we look for journalism, as you said, we need to look for something in depth, something that requires times. The journalist who goes to the stadium and cover the game and write the story about the game, it's finished. It can be replaced by a robot. That's why what we're trying to tell the young students, we need to prepare ourselves for something that is more in depth, more based on background story. And Idah, and then Jean-Paul, and then I'll shut up. Idah, in your country, the challenges are different from those that someone from Germany should face. So let's try to share a word of encouragement for someone that is looking for stories and to an outlet for stories and investigative journalism. And then we go to Jean-Paul.
Right. Okay. It's really interesting, and I really agree with everything Hajo has said, and I agree with everything you're saying as well in terms of, first of all, the future of journalism. Because breaking news is pretty much dead. Everything is on the phone now. So what is the future of journalism? This is arguable. I would say it's investigative and it's human interest based. People, and this is a bold statement, but people don't care about the goal that Thierry Henry scored in 2006. Why? Because they can enter YouTube and watch it 20 times over and over again. So when we're talking content and we're talking the future of journalism, people want to know what Thierry Henry felt before that game. People want to know what if the player has any interesting rituals he does in the locker room, if the player calls his mom or calls his wife. People want the heartstrings, the emotions, everything that goes behind what we see on the phone now, which is we can YouTube and Vimeo everything. So that is where the future of journalism is going, for me at least, investigative and human interest based. I come from a country where, I'll say it for what it is. The brown, we call it brown envelope journalism. It's getting more and more. Independent journalism is getting less and less. And editorial policy is based on what is bringing the money currently, So it's less per se about the content that people need to see and more about the content that corporations can pay to promote themselves. That's how at least it is in Kenya. So even for the documentary I did, I might have, as you said, which is definitely true, the cover of, currently being employed and working for a specific company, but the resources were almost nil, for this documentary. And for sure, if I had better resources, then who knows, So we look at it and we say, it's a half decent effort in terms of the impact it was able to achieve with almost zero resources, because everything is going to what can bring the money right now. And some of these investigations, they take years, but the eventual impact is so huge. So in line with what you'd asked before, this might seem a bit cliche, but it's also true. Conviction in your story, confidence, self-belief in what you have to tell the world, in what you feel you need to tell the truth about, in what you feel you need to develop in terms of the story. And what I mean by that is, and I'll give you a perfect example. It's important to know investigations in sports because that's predominantly what we're in, but it's also important to know investigations generally, politically, economically, in business, what's going on in the world. It's so important to have a curious mind, So the example I want to give you is of a journalist called Ronan Farrow. Now, for those who don't know who Ronan Farrow is, he is a young journalist who actually broke the story about the Me Too movement, what led at least to the Me Too movement, which was a huge story in Hollywood with some of the worst and some of the biggest sexual predators in Hollywood, led by Harvey Weinstein. And Ronan Farrow had initially written the story and was chasing this investigative story for NBS, I believe. I stand to be corrected though, but it was initially for NBS. And you know what? He went to NBS with a scoop. He had a brilliant story to give them, and they didn't take it for whatever reason. He could have let the story die. He could have gotten totally deflated, could have just said, enough is enough. I've been chasing this for years. My employer or my editor is not going to take it. But he said no. He was confident enough in the story that changed the world and changed Hollywood, changed the face of Hollywood as we know it. And he took the story from NBS or NBC, I believe, to the New Yorker. And the New Yorker is eventually the publication that took up that story, broke that story, and the story ended up even, I think it was getting 2 Pulitzers. Of course, they weren't doing it for the Pulitzers, but it's the impact that the story had. And it's just because Ronan Farrow believed in what he was doing. So to answer your question, Ricardo, I think it's about confidence, it's about conviction, and it's about trying to leave this place better than you found it.
Maybe I can add something, but you have also to fight against those people who really are interested only in getting much more money. This is exactly that what I always criticize. If it comes to, let's say, public services, if you talk about hospitals, why hospitals have to make profit? No, they have to help the people. Journalism has to tell the truth and is not in first hand to make money. This is a problem. That's what we have to discuss. And that's exactly the reason for, I think, we should not only discuss within our own bubble, we have to confront those people who sell the soul of journalism only to get more clicks. I know that the whole Corona crisis is a mess when it comes to communication. It's a disaster because in Germany, for example, people get feared because there are only headlines which distract from the real facts, because people think in some online teams, if I change slightly the headline, I get more clicks. That is a problem because people encourage them to do so. And these people are, from my point of view, not always journalists. These are people who have their duty in order only to make more money. This is a contradiction in itself from my point of view. And I know it sounds really very idealistic, I know that, but I was always like this, and I fight against this 20 years ago, and people have been laughing about what we did, but I told them, okay, if you don't do so, I will find my way. You are right. We need conviction. We need passion for that. That's correct. But to be honest, sometimes even that doesn't help. Because if people need only black figures and not red figures, as we say it in Germany, that means always plus but never minus, then we will have this problem. And again, what I always say is, at least in Germany, which is in a way, a very compared to others, a very rich country, people have to pay for journalism. Journalism is not for nothing. Journalism cannot be free. People have to understand that it's not the correct way, that for working in journalism, this is for free, because this was, for me, the initial sin of everything in online 20 years ago, when people thought we can deliver all content for free on the internet. This is a problem, and we have to face this problem. I know that many publishers have a long time ago understood the serious contradiction in this problem, but again, it's still really challenging for many people to fight against, let's say, free articles, free publications in the internet. And by the way, even worse, because people trust social media platforms, they trust people who are not journalists, even more. Let's say the truth is only in this, let's say, the second row, and all speculation, all conspiracy theories are spreading all over the world because these people are not journalists. So at the very end, if we want to help the public opinion to get at least an educational based opinion on many things, we need to strengthen journalism. And that means not to talk within our bubble, which is necessary as we do now, but much more to confront the people who are in charge, who have the money, who invest the money. To be honest, if I exaggerate now a little bit, we have to talk to Mr. Murdoch or to the guys from Axel Springer in Germany or to Mr. Berlusconi about that, and not with journalists, if they are able to do that. I know that people don't care, I know that, but I just want to focus which is, from my point of view, the center which we should focus on.
I think that this is correct, but to go to a war, before you have to prepare the soldier. If you
I did that for many years, Gianni. I did that for many years.
You are, but you know, I can tell you one thing, that in some way, you and me, because I met you the first time on the stadium, in the stadium, before you begin your career as an investigator, no? But before, we have lived also the golden era of sport journalism, where it was possible also to speak directly with people and so on. Now, they put a wall between us and the athlete, no, completely, because they have to hide something, because the so-called agent that are following now the athlete is another wall for us, no, because they want always that we don't understand. But to go to discuss with the so-called owner of the news, before we must prepare all the young people to the new situation, because many of them grow up only with the social media. So if we don't teach what is the real profession, after how you can go to negotiate with other people, will be the journalism of the future. We have to prepare the people, because the first investment that we have to do is in culture. And after, when we upgrade the culture, also many other journalists around the world will begin their fight to defend our journalism. And the future of the journalism is the clean journalism that is not so easy to defend in this moment. And especially, but not only for the owner, but the most important thing is that many times in the newspaper, in television, there are also demands that is over you, that sometimes is not interest, because he believes that this is not interesting for the big public.
It doesn't need to be interesting for the big public, to be honest.
Yes, the problem, if you have a chief over you, and it happened also to you, that you have a chief that he doesn't understand because he doesn't care, not because he is an ally of a federation, no, because he doesn't care, because he's saying that the reader wants something else. For you, it's difficult. After you can choose your way, you were lucky to find the right way. Now everybody, we have to tell our experience to everybody to choose their way after. And this, we are here to discuss why I wanted also 3 different voices, because there are 3 different experiences that are important for people. And after, I hope that many others will be interested into investigating.
Gianni, I totally agree with you that we have to do that kind of discussions. Sure. This is not against this. I just say, if we want to proceed,
sure.
I tell you that the right thing is to make much more pressure against those who are not interested. And one thing is, I would like to add, if you talk about culture, if you talk about subculture, for example, if you talk about classic music, if you talk about opera, whatever, there's a tiny percentage of people who are really interested in. Let's say 5% of the population in Germany. But we spend money, we invest money in that, we want that because we think it's culture. And in sports, always people say, we need the majority, we reach the vast majority, we need a high number of people who are watching us. No, I don't think so. We know that we serve, or what we do, maybe for a special interest public. Doesn't matter, because even a special interest public is important. I think it is a mistake to believe that all what sports journalism is doing needs a high number of people watching it. No, it's not. We need people who are interested in that, and that's enough for me. I know that a documentary about doping will never achieve ratings like a football match. For what reason? No, it's not necessary. But the impact of a story is bigger. And again, I would never ask the question, at least in German television, and let's say in a news magazine every day, that people say, okay, because we don't like Angela Merkel, we don't do the story about Angela Merkel because nobody's interested in her. We would never do that, because this is serious politics. It is what she says is important for at least for our country. So we will cover the story about her, even if some people might say, oh, I don't care about her. Doesn't. But in sports, always the question is this interesting for people? Why? If it must be relevant. If a story is relevant, then to be honest, I'm not caring so much if there's a majority of people who are watching us. But this is not your mistake, not your fault. This is a question as you say, of owners, of people in charge. And that's what is, at least was my experience for many years. But again, the other side of the medal, we have made huge progress in the last couple of years. And Gianni, I remember when we met a couple of years ago, not only in Rio, but later on different occasions. We would never have this kind of discussion, let's say 15 years ago. This is totally different, and we have a different, let's say, level of discussion compared to 15, 20 years ago. And this is also progress.
About 15, even 17 years ago, if you remember, there was one of the most polluted Olympic of ever for doping, but was a great financial success, no? 1984, Los Angeles.
Correct.
Was the heaven of doping because there was no control at all. And
but nobody talked about it.
And for this, we are still paying what happened 17 years ago. This is still. But now we go to
Gianni, unfortunately I have to leave. I told you that I have just 15, 20 minutes. I'm now here for almost 1 hour. Sorry for this.
So it means that you have like our company at least. No.
If you have any other question to me, you can go ahead now. But otherwise, I would have to leave in 5 minutes.
I don't know, Jean-Paul. If not, listen. Because there are some people that are listening us, no, from different countries. If you are away, we can ask them to write us the question, and we will forward to you, and after you can answer to them, because there are people that are interested in this. Okay.
Okay. Good.
Paul, you have a question for him, Jean-Paul?
No, but maybe now it's time to let the journalists ask questions. I have a lot of things to say, but maybe it's too late for us, and I prefer to let to give the floor. Yeah, to give the floor to the journalists.
Now there is. I want to go to Ghana with Bah, because from Ghana there was a great investigator. I don't know if you know Anas Ayo, the guy that is.
I know.
Is live every time, every day. Where is the guy? The guy from Ghana is disappeared?
Yeah, we gave him the floor, but he disappeared.
Oh my God. So we go to Carlo Tasler.
Hello, people. Hello, everybody. So my question is for Patrick. So
I leave, okay? Sorry.
No, sorry. No, we asked. There was any question to Ayo? Wojciech.
Sorry for this, but I have to leave. Yeah.
Wait. There is the last question after you go.
So my quick question is something what Idah said, because she said that it would be much harder for her to do her job right now because she's more recognizable. You, Hajo, are really recognizable in the world after Russia and after IWF. So how are you dealing with that thing? You know, to continue your job as an
yeah, to be honest, not that easy at some point. For example, I'm not allowed to go to Russia still. They don't allow me to enter the country. I don't get a visa, and sometimes I have the feeling I'm still in a way a state enemy. But having in mind what happened yesterday with a journalist from Belarus and what may possible support has been coming from Russia, because as a country like Belarus, you can't do that kind of operation on your own, I guess. So that explains you a little about the level of let's say press freedom in those countries. So it's really challenging. You're right, sometimes. But a couple of years ago, when I went to Russia, it was more or less under the umbrella, because it was shortly after the Sochi Olympics. Nobody knew at that point that there was much corruption going on in Sochi itself. This was released 2 years later. But at that point, everybody was interested because Russia the Crimea crisis at that point was involved in the headlines. And so nobody was talking about doping and corruption in sports. So for me, it was relatively easy to move myself into Russia. But later, yes, correct, I have to be careful. And sometimes maybe we are separating our task in my team, and other people are at the front, and I'm more in the background. And the good thing is that I have now many good people working with me, so I don't have to do all the things on my own.
Okay, thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Hajo. See you around. Okay, ciao. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Good luck.
Ciao. Now there was Jean-Paul.
Yes. No, I really, so we are at the heart of the problem is that the sports units are not here to they are not here. They are here to sell a produce that their media bought at un titre acheté très cher. I wanted to speak with Hajo, but he's away now. You know that Hajo told you that not only
you can speak in French. You can speak in French if you want.
Not only was helped in his investigation by ARD, but also ARD decided, maybe thanks to him, not to broadcast Le Tour de France in 2008. And it was because of this investigation. And but it is an example apart. It is not. It is very only one example because the other media, the television, they are here to sell a produce. So they cannot have an investigation unit because they have to say it's a marvelous, it is a good event because we broadcast it. And for sure, they decided not to broadcast. You know, Germany is a part in this world. We can say, but the media who want an investigation, they can now L'Équipe, the daily paper, sport paper L'Équipe, for example, as an investigation unit, and they have the money for that. But it is a big media. Otherwise, the TV, the different TV, they have. We cannot say they have no investigation unit, but they buy magazine to a private production company. So if the produce is good, they take it. If not, they have no. It has no cost for them because to investigate, as everybody said, it takes a lot of money and a lot of time. So how can we do? And the difference is, Patrick told you, he investigated on his free time. Idah, it was a fight to investigate. How can we do? The journalists who want to investigate are in demand, and they have to be well known then to be asked by a big production private company to join them and to work for them. It is the heart of the problem. How can we be an investigate journalist? Really, I don't know. And maybe Idah could tell us more. How did you do, Idah? It's wonderful what you did in Kenya. How did you do?
So thank you for that. As I said earlier, this was definitely a huge collaborative effort between print and TV. And initially, when I had thought of coming up with the concept, when I conceptualized this particular documentary, there was so much to do in that year. And luckily enough at the time, print was able to develop and actually unearth amazing investigations within match fixing in Kenya. And from there on, as I was constantly giving my script, and my editor would tell me, no, come back with another script, revise this, edit this, as that was happening, life was also going on, and so was match fixing and its development in Kenya. And as I said, it's still going on, but thankfully with the sort of revelations that have been there over match fixing in the last year or so, we're seeing small strides, nothing too big, because as we're saying, this is an international syndicate. But we're now at a point where the local football governing body in Kenya, Football Kenya Federation, or FKF, is actually in the process of liaising with a data company from the UK to actually give statistics within local football. And as Ricardo was saying, it's something, the dynamics are very different between, say, Africa and Europe, or Africa and the West, because whereas football statistics are very simple and something that, people in the West might even take for granted, it's something that is not too commonplace in I'll give Kenya as an example. Let me not generalize and say Africa. And what I mean by that is, so for example, how these people make their money. They rely on games in the interior of Kenya, where the network, first of all, the infrastructure is very poor, the network is even worse. And those are often the games where you will see maybe one journalist, and the journalist also doubles up as the team manager. It's absolutely crazy in some situations. So what happens is all these games are currently on different websites, and don't forget that it's live score. So it's as per the game is happening. But the only way we can get information from that game in the interior part of Kenya is through the one journalist who is at that field. So what do? You bribe him as the match fixer, you bribe him and tell him or her, please delay on that goal or delay on the assist. For example, in Kenya, I can tell you for a fact, we have zero data on who provides the assists for the goals. So all we have is probably, say, the version of a golden boot or an MVP for the season. But we have no data on who gave the most numbers of assists. We have no data on red or yellow cards. We have no such data. So in terms of the goals, for example, if a goal has been scored on minute 30, they tell the person that's inputting the data into the system to delay the goal. Tell us that a goal has been scored, we'll place the bet, make the money, so that once the goal appears on the system, we knew exactly what we were betting on. So it's tough, and I will say, especially as a woman, it's definitely there are definitely different challenges going into that. But as I said, there are amazing, female journalists coming up. There are amazing female journalists already that we can look up to. But I will also admit that there are not too many in the investigative sector. So, my hope is to be able to develop this aspect of my journalism and hopefully have more young women, have more girls come into this, because it's a very threatening, it's very intimidating, but ultimately, we need more of us in this as well. For example, for me with this particular documentary, one of the things that got me in was how unassuming I was at the time, So I looked relatively non-threatening. I looked like just any, run-of-the-mill sort of person who's coming to ask for information. And it was a bit easier even for me to get some of these documentation that had been hidden and that was showing referees actually admitting to receiving bribes. But now, as we said, I probably would not be in a situation to, but that is why I also hope to develop the mechanisms through which I'm doing investigative reporting, be it undercover footage, which is something I'd like to move on to soon.
And I want also to remind one thing, that what she said, Idah, regarding to delay the news of a goal or of a score. For example, here in Italy or in all Europe, what it happened when you see especially in the low league, in the lower league, where usually the spectator perhaps are 100, and on the stadium you can see sometimes a person that is far from all the other, but he is always at the phone. And you ask why he is always on the phone. because it's connected with Singapore or Hong Kong. And when there is a score, immediately say score, and they study that it needs at least 1 minute, 1 minute and a half to have the official result from the federation to go out. And in this 1 minute and a half, they make all the betting. This is the real situation, that it happens many times around the world. So is necessary only one man with the phone to find the solution of the fake betting. I want to go to Patrick. Patrick, you can give to our colleague, our young colleague, and not only young, what are all the different match fixing rules now? We were talking before, no? Sometimes it's the yellow card, the red card.
Oui,
How
alors,
it's developing now?
Truquer un match, c'est pas forcément vouloir connaître le résultat. Tous les faits de jeu, comme le carton jaune, le carton rouge, le moment où un coup franc se passe, le prochain corner, la première touche, tous ces éléments-là peuvent être sujets à des paris. Il faut bien voir que les sites qui sont contrôlés ici en Europe par Sport Radar ne représentent qu'une minorité des sites qu'il existe dans le monde. Il y a énormément d'opérateurs en Chine, en Malaisie, où l'on ne peut même pas comprendre sur quoi, en fait, on parie. Il faut voir aussi qu'on a la possibilité, avec certains opérateurs de paris, de proposer nous-mêmes les paris. Donc, si l'on est bien organisé, on va dire que on va demander aux joueurs numéro 10 de telle équipe en deuxième division de, je dis n'importe quoi, de Bulgarie, de prendre un carton jaune à entre la 60e et la 70e minute. Et nous proposons le pari. Et la compagnie le prend et d'autres parient avec nous. Donc, on peut truquer un match sans toucher le résultat. Et on peut aussi, et c'était le cas dans le match Bahreïn-Togo, changer en fait le scénario dont on a besoin pendant le match. Au départ, Bahreïn-Togo, il était prévu que le Togo reçoive beaucoup de buts, c'est-à-dire plus de 3,5 buts dans le match. Après un quart d'heure de jeu à Singapour, on a remarqué que la rumeur s'était propagée sur les marchés et que la cote à plus de 3,5 buts par match n'était pas bonne. Donc, ce qui s'est passé, c'est que depuis Singapour, on a demandé à Wilson Rajperumal de demander à l'entraîneur et à l'arbitre qui était sur le terrain de changer le scénario et que de plus de 3,5 buts, on ait un match à moins de 3,5 buts. Et là, le match a complètement changé. Les joueurs étaient tout le temps blessés et couchés sur le terrain. Il y a eu moins de 9 minutes de jeu effectif en deuxième mi-temps. L'arbitre a sifflé des fautes qui étaient inexistantes pour perdre du temps, tout le temps. Et avec ceci, le match s'est terminé 3-0. Les truqueurs, eux, avaient changé en fait de pari pendant le match. Ils ont parié l'exact inverse de ce que tous les autres ont parié et ils ont pu se faire beaucoup d'argent. Et là maintenant, avec le live betting, on parie en cours de match et on change en fait les objectifs aussi en cours de match. C'est pas un problème. Donc pour ceux qui essaient de lutter, qui essaient de voir s'il y a match fixing ou pas, on est quasiment devant une mission impossible. Et même si l'on voit quelque chose, même si les cotes des différents paris bougent et qu'il y a alerte, le moment où une fédération, que ce soit l'UEFA ou une fédération nationale, ouvre une enquête, il s'est passé tellement de temps que plus aucune preuve n'existe. L'argent a été donné de main à main, les choses ont disparu et puis on n'a plus rien pour essayer d'aller de l'avant. La police ne va pas enquêter. En Suisse, la police n'enquête pas sur ce genre de choses parce que ce n'est pas assez dangereux. Parce qu'il n'y a pas de victimes. Les victimes sont en Asie. Donc, le problème, pour moi, il est presque insoluble. On doit continuer à en parler, mais c'est quelque chose qui est très compliqué.
Thank you. Thank you. Martin, have you recovered your...
I think so. Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
A
Thank
quick
you.
question, because after there are some guys that are waiting since...
I know. It was a fascinating interchange of opinions, and also I had a question, and then I changed my question like 10 different times because it's so important. My question now to Idah in particular is, when I know what you said about changing the script like 3 different times, when did you finally know, okay, we are done, we can publish? Because how did you deal with the pace or the importance of holding, but at the same time the adrenaline of willing to publish?
Wow. So I would like to really pretend that it was my choice, but it wasn't, because first and foremost, as I've said, it was a really busy year. So I was doing it. I was literally working on my days off. I was coming and we go shoot on my days off. I was trying to script at night after a long day. So a lot of it was my editor. Thank God, that I was under the guidance of a very, very dedicated editor telling me not yet, not yet, not yet. And one thing that he kept telling me is, go for the emotion. Go, while you are giving us facts and while you are giving us, a chronological set of what's happened, go for the emotion. Try and find out why, and that is why I also sought to end my documentary in that way, trying to, bring an understanding and a solution to the problem that, yes, this is match fixing. This is how it's been happening over the last decade. But why does it happen in the way it does, in the context within which we're in, which for me is Africa, where, players get paid barely $300 on a good month. And that's a player playing for a decently or a reasonable team, So yes, it's the poverty. Is it the greed as well? So all those variables together under the guidance of my editor is when we were finally able to say, we have it. We have addressed as many aspects of this situation as possible. We have talked to, we were literally ticking and checking off our boxes. Have we given the right of attribution in the case that it was a part of the documentary that print had developed? Yes. Have we given the right of reply to everyone involved? Yes. Have we been able to protect the whistleblower and some of our sources in this, because there was a disguised figure within the documentary? Yes, we have. So only after checking all our boxes, because it goes back to what we were talking about before, which is we're in a society, we're in times, and we're living in a generation where everything is so quick. You want to be so quick to deliver, so quick to break. And in the process, you can end up making almost a career-threatening or even life-threatening mistake. And sometimes not even for you, but even for someone else, when you end up endangering someone's life just because you didn't go through the documentary 2-3 more times to see, is the blur perfect? Or can this person actually be recognized? It's just small things like those. So in that situation, looking at it from a bigger picture, when we were able to finalize on all that is when we said, yes, this can go on air, this can broadcast.
Thank you, Idah. Gianni, back to you.
We have only 15 minutes for some question. I've seen raise hand. We begin with Philippe from Burkina Faso. Philippe. Okay, speak.
Oui, bonjour à tous. Vous m'entendez?
Yes, yes. Yes, yes.
Ok, ouais. Bonjour à tous. Merci à tous les intervenants qui nous permettent de comprendre davantage comment est-ce que et les enquêtes se passent, comment est-ce que ça marche, comment est-ce que nous devons nous y prendre donc, pour réaliser ce genre de choses. Mais il faut dire que dans notre contexte ici en Afrique, et notamment en Afrique subsaharienne, c'est vraiment très, très, très compliqué. Hein. Il faut le dire parce que il y a vraiment cette question financière, parce que les enquêtes, ça coûte énormément beaucoup, alors que nos entreprises de presse ne sont pas aussi aisées que cela. Donc déjà, il y a cela qui nous empêche quelquefois de pouvoir réaliser au mieux ce genre de choses. Et en plus de cela, il faut noter qu'à notre niveau, il y a beaucoup de pression, parfois des menaces qui peuvent même aller jusqu'à des menaces de mort et tout ça. Et donc, cela nous empêche de vraiment faire le travail pour lequel nous sommes payés. Cela nous emmène surtout à nous tourner vers les comptes rendus des performances de certains sportifs. Et quel conseil est-ce que vous pouvez nous donner justement dans ce sens-là pour pouvoir arriver à faire plus d'enquêtes et moins de comptes rendus? Merci.
No, I don't think that you have to make less report on performance, but you must be ready to focus on to see if something is going wrong, because even if you have not so much financial aid, you can understand by yourself if something is wrong, and you can begin to investigate speaking with people. So the most important thing is that every journalist has to understand that he has to dig in the background of an athlete or a club or so on, to be sure that if the world is clean or not. The problem is not only a problem of finance, is also our mental problem, to understand that sometimes we have to go a little bit over. We have not to stay on the surface. So don't worry, you can be also a good investigative journalist also for yourself, to understand better the situation, and after it will come a moment in which you can write everything about. I know that is very difficult, but not only in Africa, everywhere. The situation is everywhere the same, because sometimes when you write something, you can be called the day after by a lawyer, that he will tell you that this athlete will sue you and your newspaper. Sometimes it happens, sometimes they are only telling you to try to stop you, because after they don't go to court. But this is the part. Unfortunately, in Africa, there are physical threats, and this is very dangerous. So, but the most important thing, never give up to investigate for yourself, not only for the public, because it's a mental situation that after will help you in the future. Next, now we go to, okay, Dol Noren, yes, Al-Arabi.
Assalamu alaikum.
Yes, from.
I will speak in Arabic.
Yes, sure.
Okay. بداية من وجهة نظري أن الصحافة الاستقصائية ممتعة ومثيرة، ولكنها سلاح ذو حدين في البلدان التي تعاني حالة من النزاعات والحروب، وقد يعرض ذلك الصحفي إلى خطر. ولكن سؤالي هو: ما هي الأساسيات في البدء في كتابة أو إنشاء التقارير الاستقصائية الصحفية؟ شكرا.
Chi vuol rispondere? Who wants to answer? I have to answer, or Ricardo, or Keir, or some other wants to answer? Ricardo, you have had an experience in Iraq, no? And open the microphone.
We are keeping on opening the microphone, but he needs to say, okay. From our side,
yeah,
look.
Okay, go ahead.
All right.
Which angle you want me to take from Iraq?
No, because this colleague has said that living in Yemen in a conflict, how is possible to
No,
develop?
no, I know. Look, the media in war zone or war torn country is a complicated thing, and of course, the advantage when you do sport is that you don't do politics, and people do not pay much attention because you're not getting involved into the, serious stuff. But in my example, I've done several stories in Kabul, for example, when they reopened after the Taliban regime, a very famous weightlifting gym. And then in Iraq, when I followed the team, the boxing team of these kids that were like trying to go to the Olympics in Brazil. And the very opening shot of this documentary, speaking to you in Yemen, is that the guys are saying, we care about going to the Olympics. I'm Shia, is Sunni, is Christian, we don't care. And immediately the movie about sport becomes something relevant into something else. Politics, social, whatever. So even in Yemen, even in war zone, there are opportunity to dig into something that can become very, very relevant. And sport is the perfect platform. So even you in Yemen, don't think, keep your eyes open, keep your antennas always in tune, because look, guys, I'm doing documentaries and I really love watching TV reportage, but the war in Yemen, the war in Iraq, the war in Syria, the story that really stay with the people, they become movies, they become documentary, are the one with human aspect, and most of them are related to sport. People that were able to train despite the odds, the obstacle, the bombing. So in a way, living in Yemen is a privilege right now, because you have a lot of stuff you can say. You can tell us we don't know anything about Yemen. I know it's a provocation. I know we should be in a peaceful place, but from a journalistic standpoint, it's like a white canvas. And because of the war, you can tell a story that can resonate also in the United States, in Argentina, because we know there is a war, and war is always a news, a piece of information. I don't know if I clarify myself. I hope so.
Not so much. Okay, now we go to United Kingdom. Carlo Tasler.
So for Patrick question, what I was going to say is we have concluded that being investigative journalist requires a lot of journalist freedom. It requires to be independent from the state, from the government, even from your own media, as colleague Hajo said earlier. So how has that changed within the last year, within the year of the pandemic?
Alors, je ne pense pas que cela a beaucoup changé. Peut-être qu'avec la pandémie, il y a, je dirais, peut-être moins de moyens dans des journaux comme le nôtre, dans des entreprises de médias où je travaille. Mais je pense que la recherche de l'indépendance, le besoin d'indépendance, ça n'a pas tellement changé. L'indépendance, si on a le choix quelque part, c'est plus dans l'état d'esprit. On le voit avec Idah, on le voit avec Hajo. Ce sont des combats qui sont là depuis longtemps. Et ma manière de procéder, de travailler à côté de mon emploi normal, est aussi une recherche d'indépendance. Je ne veux pas que l'on me dise tu dois faire ça à tel moment, comme ça ou comme ça. Je veux avoir le temps d'avancer dans ce que je recherche et puis de choisir ce que j'estime pertinent. Et alors, voilà, je ne sais pas si je réponds à ta question, mais je pense que si on a perdu de l'indépendance durant cette année, c'est parce que l'on a perdu des moyens, mais des moyens de se déplacer, des moyens de voir les gens, parce qu'une enquête, une investigation, c'est d'abord se regarder les yeux dans les yeux. C'est parler aux gens les yeux dans les yeux. Ce n'est pas au téléphone qu'on va leur dire, ou par WhatsApp, qu'on va leur dire, fais-moi confiance, parle-moi, parce que si tu me parles, tu feras avancer quelque chose. Cette confiance-là, c'est en rencontrant les gens qu'on peut la donner.
Okay, now we go to Pakistan. Mohammed Suleiman Khan.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is, while a journalist investigates for any particular news, there are fellow workers who unethically warn about the dangers. How to reset that situation? Thank you.
I have not. Can you read again, please?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you? Okay. While a journalist investigates for any particular news, there are fellow workers who unethically warn about the dangers. How to reset that situation?
But for what I have understood, I think that every journalist that is making an investigation knows that there are some danger. It depends also by the country in which you are living, because there's some country in which in danger is your life. So it's the choice. And we respect a lot all the journalists that are risking, because it's not so easy, because they're risking for a better sport world and for the future of the next generation. So they have all our support. I know that is a difficult choice for a journalist to choose to be only investigative, because there are different levels of investigation also. There is the investigation for a small situation that everybody of us can do. More you go higher, more dangerous becomes. But this is important, that if most of the journalists will begin to investigate a little bit, the situation will be better for everybody. If he's only one in a country, for him it will be very difficult. So for this reason, as association, we discuss with all the different journalists in different countries to help them to go to look for the truth, because it's not so easy sometimes, because it's difficult to investigate also. Sometimes we have to investigate also people that we know, that we are friends with us. And unfortunately, that is the worst part. But we have to do if we want to prepare a better world after. So guys, now we have 2 minutes. Sorry for the people that are still waiting, but we have 2 minutes only for the 4-language translation. After we can speak perhaps a little bit in English. But I want to remind you that on Thursday and Friday, there will be the tutorial for language in the different languages. And also there will be guests of investigative journalists. So you will have other extra 2 hours to discuss every point. And now I have to tell you that next week, instead to be on Tuesday, the 1st of June, we will go to the 3rd of June, because we will make the connection from Lausanne, from the Museum of Lausanne, in which we will speak about Tokyo Olympics, because are 50 days to the Olympic, will be 50 days to the Olympic. And after we will present a special book of cartoons regarding the history of Olympics. Will be a different lesson, because I think that we will speak also another kind of journalism, very important, but will be also on the news regarding the Olympics, because everybody wants to know what will happen over there. So the next meeting will be Thursday and Friday first with the tutorial, and after the 3 of June from Lausanne. I will speak you from Lausanne, from the capital of the Olympic movement, to have the last news about the Olympic and also about something very interesting. So guys, if somebody wants to stay after to speak only in English, is free to stay, but we can stay maximum half of an hour, half of an hour more, because after many other people has other commitment or work. There was a girl from Yemen, Saad, sorry, and another woman. Saad, are you there?
Okay, yes. Hello, Gianni and Ida. I will speak in Arabic.
But now there is no translation in Arabic. It's finished, the translation. I'm afraid. Okay, the last question. The last question, let's see. There are still translation?
Okay, the question is, كيف نستطيع الربط بين الصحافة الاستقصائية؟
Sorry, Saad, it's over. Unfortunately, there is no more translation because we have a contract for 2 hours and it is finished. Can you make in English?
Gianni, Nadine is here. If you need.
Nadine can translate. Okay, you can make the translation. Nadine will make it. You can speak in Arabic.
The question is, how can I connect?
Okay, go ahead.
The question is, how can I connect between the journalism and the documentary film, and what the kind is dangerous, journalist or documentary film?
I have not.
ممكن تحكي بالعربي؟
السؤال هو كيف نستطيع الربط ما بين الصحافة الاستقصائية والفيلم الوثائقي، وأيهما أخطر في عالم الرياضة، الفيلم الوثائقي أم الصحافة الاستقصائية؟
So how can you link between investigative journalism and the world of filmmaking or documentary making, and which is preferred for the sports journalism world?
There is no difference. One thing is are the videos, the documentary, that it takes more time, and another kind of investigative journalism that we can do on daily basis. We can every day to propose something. Can you translate?
I'll send it to her. I'll send it to her.
You send to her, okay.
By texting, yeah.
Yeah. There is any other question? If not, I have first of all to thank there is Ba from Ghana, that you were the first that I called after you disappear. Ba, you are in the car. We need the microphone.
My connection was giving me a challenge.
Okay, Ba, tell.
Yes. Thank you very much. I think this is a very sensitive and an interesting discussion we are having. We are privileged here in Ghana. Most of my guys that I meet, I talk to them, they are also connected, and we are glad that you are giving these young guys the opportunity to also learn from you guys. You've been in the system for 30, 40 years, and we appreciate it. Now, my question is, I started as a young boy. I wanted to become an investigative sports journalist, and Janet, to be frank, getting into at least 2 years of my career, it was difficult for me, because in our system, it is difficult. Once you are an investigative journalist, you don't get certain things from certain people, and you are not well paid also in Africa per se. You are not well paid. So I want to ask, how do you sustain yourself as a sports investigative journalist, looking behind that you don't have any support from anywhere? How do you sustain yourself?
Who wants to answer? Ricardo? Kerry is still there. Martin, I don't see. Ricardo?
Well, the how do you sustain yourself? Again, it's we talk about that all day, and maybe I'm not the person. Maybe Idah should answer that, because she works with freelancers as well. She knows how freelancers in Africa. I don't know, Kenya is not Ghana, but I'm sure there are more similarity between Ghana and Kenya than Italy or United States and Ghana. Idah, you want to try?
Yeah, thanks, Ricardo. So yeah, as Ricardo has said, I am employed, but I also do freelance for a few organizations here and there. And I think the one thing I keep going back to, I think, which is also so important, that hopefully maybe Gianni, AIPS can also be able to develop with the young reporters, is the ability to conceptualize and be able to pitch a story effectively. Because when we look at where we are going and the road ahead, people are getting laid off more and more from gainful employment. So it's all about how strong can you pitch, and that will result in the number of stories you can do in any given month, that for different journalists, depending on how established they are, gives them an even bigger salary sometimes than even people who are employed on a permanent basis or on a full-time basis. So I think being able to give an idea, conceptualize it, develop it, and most importantly, pitch it. But for you to pitch it, you also need to pitch it to the right people. So I think it's also very important, the more you grow and the older you get in your career, to expand your network, and these sorts of forums, talk to different people, put yourself out there constantly, because sometimes we're so afraid of failure and we're so afraid of looking, here or there, that you're not willing to put yourself out there. But the people who are putting themselves out there are getting it done, and there's this saying I like that says, sometimes it's better done than trying to be perfect. Just do it, and then try to perfect on your execution and on your delivery. So 2 things: building on the skill and the art of pitching, and number 2 is building and expanding your network. I think that's the way to go, not just in Africa. Of course, our dynamics are different, but indeed all over the world. And especially COVID-19, after the pandemic, I think that's what we should learn.
Okay, now we go to Nigeria. Mary J. Are you there, Mary J?
Yeah, I'm here, but unfortunately, I can't put on my video. My question probably is not a very important question, but during the course of the discussions, Idah mentioned the issue in Kenya, where the scores or figures from a football game are uploaded much later, and also Gianni talked about the same thing, but it was referred to as under the context of match fixing. So I just want to be cleared on that issue. Is it really match fixing or just a betting scandal? Because it doesn't really affect the outcome of the game. It's just the scores being delayed for people to stake whatever bogus bets they have to do to make extra money. So is it really match fixing or just a betting scandal?
I think that Patrick was very clear before. Everything is match fixing, no, Patrick, because even the yellow card that a player perhaps accept to have the first yellow card, is paid only to make the yellow card. So this doesn't change the result, but it's the beginning of a process that will bring him to fix the match after, or not, Patrick?
Yes, I'm sorry, my English is not so good, but for me, everything which change a match or the life of a match is match fixing, because it's not more reality, it's not more play. Yes, maybe there is a betting scandal behind that, but it's together. A match, a player must can. I don't know, je sais plus comment dire.
You can speak in French and somebody can translate.
Ok. Un joueur doit pouvoir jouer naturellement sans penser à quelqu'un à l'extérieur qui lui dicte ce qu'il doit faire. Si un carton jaune arrive à la 12e minute, la 13e minute ne sera pas la même.
Certo. He says that the play must be natural, completely natural. And if somebody accepts even to take a yellow to the 12 minutes after the beginning, after the 13 minute of the same game will not be the same game, will be another game, because it changed. Because this yellow card is changing, yellow card that is, there is the will to have this card. It was not something, a moment in the play. It was something that he knew that after 12 minutes he has to take the yellow card. So it means that there is the match after the 12 minutes is completely different. Because it's the beginning of match fixing.
Sorry, Gianni, can I just add something onto that?
Sure.
Thank you. So just to add a bit onto that, match fixing in essence is manipulation of a game or manipulation of matches. That can happen in a wide array of circumstances. So when we talk about even that yellow or red card that Patrick and Gianni are talking about, then that influences the end result of the game, because that yellow card or that red card will lead to one player being less on purpose. So this one team will be stronger than this other team. And the two are actually inextricably linked, because the main facilitator of match fixing now is sports betting. The major reason why a lot of people are manipulating matches is to make money through sports betting. So a lot of the times you'll find that a betting scandal is directly intertwined or interlinked with a match fixing scandal.
Sure. Yes. Now we go to, again, there is Hashem Ali from Yemen that is always with us every time. Hashem.
Yes, Jenny, thank you so much. Okay, I will speak in Arabic.
Yeah, okay. Nadine, are you ready to translate? Wait a moment. Nadine?
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay, Nadine is ready, you can go.
Okay, please translate
Short
it.
question, a short question, because now we have...
Okay. طيب. كما نعرف، على الرغم من الدور المهم الذي تلعبه الصحافة الاستقصائية في كشف الحقائق والخفايا، إلا أن هذا النوع في المنطقة خصوصا المنطقة العربية بات يواجه صعوبات عدة وحملة شرسة من قبل الحكومات والأنظمة. سؤالي، ما هي الطرق أو ما هي الوسائل التي من خلالها نستطيع على الحصول على معلومات أولية التي يمكن أن نبني من خلالها التقرير الاستقصائي أو القصة الاستقصائية؟ شكرا.
So he's asking that in the Arab world, investigative journalism isn't as easy as doing it in other countries, because sometimes it is like it is fought by the government, it is fought by some entities or even federations to keep things covered, which is part of corruption in the Arab countries. He's saying, how can we try to reveal the truth, the facts more, even if you have been, even if the governments or the system is fighting this information reveal?
I can tell you that it's not so easy. What we are trying to tell even to the people that are living this difficult situation is that this is a training for your mind, that you will be prepared when the situation, even the political situation, will change a little bit, because we are seeing that in every country now there is an evolution. But investigative journalism is not only to find match fixing or corruption, is also to look in the bad behavior also on the field of somebody and so on. I think that investigation is not only for the top event, but also is for the small thing of every day. But this is my point of view. I want to hear also the point of view of Keir. Keir, are you there? If not, Jean-Paul, Ricardo, and Martin, the other mentor, what they think about this.
The main it is always the same question. It remains always the same thing. How is it possible to investigate it in two different situations? Either when we have political, financial pressure, or when we are what could I say? When we have no time, no money to do it, when we are fighting against the fast food information. I think among all the question remains always the same. How can we investigate today in this world of fast food information and of money and of political pressure? The answer is that we have to be brave. We have to do like Patrick did, to work on his free time, or to apply the journalistic skills. And it is difficult to go to be brave. In fact, it is to be brave and to see the reality, to try to be honest, to fight for the reality against his own opinion. And it is very difficult. The investigation, and especially the investigation in a country where there is a dictator or where there is a fight, is, how could I say? It is the most elaborated form of journalist. What could we say? We are in demand when we are not supported by a big company, when we are alone. We have only to do our best to try, in a part of our life, to earn our life, to let our family in security, and to have another life, and to fight. How could I say? My English is too poor to explain that.
Okay, but
it is the main problem. It is, the heart of the problem.
Some people will follow you on Friday also. So
yes, we will discuss of that on Friday in French, but it is the heart of the problem. It is really, and I know that the problem is not the same in Europe or in the States than in Africa, than in the Maghreb, and then in Yemen, and then for sure it is not the same, and then in China for sure.
I want to say, add something to what Jean-Paul just said. That goes with this subject. First of all, I say that all the time. Journalism, guys, it's a mission. It's not the journalism we intend to teach is something that you have what it takes to do it, or you should give up, because it's a mission. There is no lunch break. There is no sleeping time. It's a 24/7, and it means that you need to live your life without compromising. It's tough, it's difficult. So think about it. It's not easy. Having said that, in some country, it's easier than some other country. But there is a proverb coming from the Lebanese tribe, the Sufi tribe. They say, if you succeed, be grateful. if you don't succeed, being persistent. That's what we need to do, being persistent. Sooner or later, we'll find that crack in the story. And then I'm wrapping up and I'm giving to Martin. I'm stealing something for Martin. To give you an example, during the dictatorship in Argentina back in the 70s, there was one of the best writers in the history of the country. It was a journalist. He was writing books about football. Amazing, funny books. His name was Osvaldo Soriano. But in fact, he was writing books and stories about the dictatorship, about the political situation, using sport. And nobody could say anything because he was writing about sport. Exactly. But his books were great manifesto against the dictatorship. So you see how many opportunities we have to create something relevant. Marty, I'm sorry I stole the Argentinian thing.
But you know, there was a book with Emil Zatopek, the same thing. It was a sports story, but it was, again, the communism, the story of Emil Zatopek as a novel, you know. It was really, we can, with sports, we can explain something which is, with sport, we can explain something which is much more important than sports.
Martin?
No, I wanted just to say, I just wanted to say that what we learned here also is the importance of not, because we come from the fast food now, that Jean-Paul said, the fast food, right? So everything is like, not like, heart in Instagram, and that's it. And we've learned here that these stories were not meant, did not start as a natural reaction. I mean, Hajo Seppelt said that it took him like 2-3 years just to start pursuing this story. So again, Patrick brought to life a story that was from 10 years ago, and it's us that need to decide what is a story and when a story is still alive. We cannot just trust mainstream media saying, okay, this story is not worth pursuing, this story is not interested, there is not an audience for this story, because if we follow that, it's fast food industry. It's going to be all the time about the last result and the last scandal, and it lasts 5 minutes and then it's over. And it's up to us to decide to go deeper, start searching, and create a full story.
I think if I can come in there, we had a very good question earlier on, which was a very basic one. How do you keep a roof over your head and put food on the table by being an investigative journalist?
Sure.
I mean, and I think Hajo gave a very good example, really, of the route he followed. I mean, he almost got there by accident. But you really, unless you have a private income, you need to be able, through your professionalism and your career and your record and your own credibility, which is a point that Ricardo stresses very much, to be able to convince your employer or whoever commissions you that, hey, you have got something worth investigating, worth following up. And that may well be a story that develops out of the day-to-day bread and butter work that you put in. I mean, I said about the private income, we had a very well-known investigative sports journalist here who was a farmer. I mean, it's fine. He could have his income from being a farmer, but that gave him the opportunity, and initially the financial support to be able to follow the leads that he did. Again, you have several of the major newspapers I mean, in the UK, Sunday Times, other newspapers as well, who have their investigative teams. But to be a freelance investigative journalist and put food on the table, that's very, very tough. It is a question. Firstly, you're building yourself as a journalist. You are building your own credibility within your own environment and your own context. You know, it's not something you can say, oh, I'm going to be an investigative journalist tomorrow. Doesn't work like that. It's you know, it's a tough world in which we operate, and it is a question of building yourself and your credibility.
Good. So now we have the last question, Francis. From which country, Francis? Open the microphone. Open the microphone to Francis, please. Girls. Okay.
Oui, allô? Oui, allô?
Yes.
Allô? Oui, allô?
Yes, yes.
Est-ce que vous m'écoutez?
Oui.
Oui.
D'accord. De ressort, nous disons que le journalisme d'investigation a pour objet de révéler des affaires dissimulées de manière délibérée. Alors que nous savons que par essence, le journalisme commande une démarche d'investigation et que dans la démarche du journalisme d'investigation, il faut être indépendant vis-à-vis des pouvoirs politiques ou économiques. Tantôt, j'ai suivi un confrère, un panéliste, à savoir M. Patrick Oberli, parler du Barren Gate. Nous l'avons appelé au Togo le Barren Gate, au temps du ministre Antoine Folly, où des gens, suite à des investigations qui avaient été faites, on avait arrêté même le ministre qui avait fait la prison au Togo. Et des gens, beaucoup même des entraîneurs qui ont organisé cet événement. Est-ce qu'ils ne voyaient pas que c'était une bonne chose? Bon, parce que dans la fête de son exposition, je pensais qu'il disait, si je m'excuse si je le prête d'intention, que eh bien, d'autres ont pu empocher des sous qui n'ont pas été enfermés, qui n'ont pas payé.
Francis,
oui.
If it's too long, can you translate?
La question, Francis.
Je voudrais que vous me parlez un peu de la suite qui peut être donnée au dossier de Barren Gate des Togolais, des faux Togolais qui ont été utilisés.
Alors, Francis, ce qu'on peut faire, parce que des suites...
Patrick, wait a moment. Nobody can understand what you are.
Patrick.
Comment?
On n'a plus de traducteur, parle anglais.
No, okay. I just want to propose to Francis, we can have a bilateral exchange by email or WhatsApp and to speak about what happens behind the film.
No, but
okay. I'll be ready to do it.
It is interesting because he was telling that the minister also went in jail. The coach of Togo went in jail. So at least there was a reaction, a real reaction to this game that was fake, and a very big reaction. This, no?
Yes, very big reaction. But the minister don't stay in jail very long. Bana Chanile, the coach, longer than the first. And there is other people like Folly, Antoine Folly. He was in jail, but he received after money from Jérôme Valquet from FIFA. Why? We can make more investigative investigation on this case, because there is the match, but there is what happens behind.
I didn't know about that Valquez has given him money.
Yes, in the film, I think there is 10% of what I find. But with 52 minutes, we can say all. And I have more footage to speak about that. But the story about the match is only 52 minutes.
Yes,
but there is many things behind.
Okay, thank you.
So now, guys, we are still a lot of us here, but after 2 hours and a half, I think that was it was a perfect marathon. So now I think that I can thank Idah and Patrick. How have you felt with all these journalists around the world? Fine or not? Patrick and Idah, what is your opinion?
Idah, first.
Okay, thank you. Really grateful for the opportunity, and it was amazing to just be able to interact with such established journalists such as Hajo and Patrick, and also to be able to impact my small experience so far on the young reporters coming after me. So yeah, it was an amazing opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you to you. Next time again. Patrick?
For sure.
For me, the same feeling, but what is most important for me, we were 115 here, and we know that sport, especially football, is the best example of globalization. And my experience is, if we are journalists in contact, bilateral contact, all the problem of sport, transfer system, betting, corruption, there is always many countries, many legislation in. And if we have a person of trust like other journalists, if we have bilateral contact like here, it's a net, it's the most important thing for me to go forward in an investigation. First, you are the first step for an investigation about FIFA, about betting in China, in Singapore, in Africa. We are always interconnected. For me, it's the most important.
Okay, thank you very much. So I see also Kostas Vernikos, former vice president, no, that is following also Olympiacos. So guys, now I would like to see also the other face, because many people are without video to see your smile before we close. If somebody, Ivan, Claire, and all the other, yes, Suleimane, Aken, Philip. And so the next meeting, as I told you, for some of you, are Thursday and Friday, divided for languages, because we will always publish to send to everybody the program with other guests, so it will be very interesting. And after, don't forget, 3 of June from Lausanne, we will speak about the Olympics in Tokyo. We will present an incredible new book, and after, I hope that everybody of you is happy after even today. I hope that we were useful with our experience. But one thing that I have to tell you, be careful of only one thing, that sometimes also for the investigation, there is somebody that is telling you some fake news. We begin to investigate, and we are making the game of the people that send us a fake news. Be careful. Sometimes it happens. It has happened also to me. Thank you very much. Bye. See you soon, guys.